And us this week will mark 2 years since a mother was shot and killed in front of her children in Buffalo, a case that sparked a larger conversation about domestic violence and protections for victims.
It now has renewed attention, with Kiera Hudson's family suing the Cheektowaga Police Department, accusing them of failing to step in against her alleged abuser and killer, her husband.
The quiet morning of October in Cheektowaga, New York was like any other. The kind of morning where the sky is pale, the streets are still damp with dew, and the world feels safe. Or at least, it's supposed to. Parents were preparing their children for school, coffee cups steaming, seatbelts clicking, soft goodbyes echoing through cracked car windows. But for one mother, that morning carried a weight that words could barely hold. Her name was Kiera Hudson, a mother of 3, full of love, full of fight, and full of fear. Kiera wasn't just any mother. She was a woman who had survived the kind of pain most people can't imagine. She had already faced the storm, the kind that doesn't come from the sky, but from someone you once trusted with your heart. She had made up her mind that she was done being afraid. That's why, just days before this morning, she went online and showed the world what she was living through. In a video that would later break hearts across the country, Kiera appeared with visible bruises and a trembling voice. She spoke about what had happened to her. She wanted the truth recorded, her story known. And then she said the words that would haunt everyone who heard them: "If anything happens to me, it's because of him." At that moment, most people watching didn't realize just how serious those words were. But Kiera knew. She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't seeking attention. She was making a record, a warning, a plea, a final attempt to save her life. Her estranged husband had been arrested just days before, charged after a violent altercation. She had finally believed that maybe, just maybe, the system would protect her. That after so many nights of fear, she and her children could finally sleep peacefully. But within hours of his arrest, he was free again. Released. Back on the streets. That morning, Kiera got dressed to take her children to school. But unlike every other mother on that same road, she did something extraordinary, something heartbreaking. She put on a bulletproof vest. Not because she was a police officer or a soldier, but because she knew the danger hadn't passed. She knew he was still out there. And she knew she might not get another chance to come home. She buckled her children into the car, kissed their foreheads, and drove off. Her heart must have been racing with every mile. Maybe she looked in the rearview mirror more often than usual. Maybe she whispered a silent prayer under her breath. She had done everything right. Reported the abuse, told her story, sought help. But the fear still sat heavy on her chest. She just wanted to get her kids safely to school. As she drove down the street that morning, witnesses would later say it all happened in an instant. A car pulled up beside hers. The quiet morning shattered into chaos. In a matter of seconds, the woman who had done everything to protect her children was gone. The sound of gunfire echoed through the neighborhood, followed by screams and sirens. When police arrived, they found her in her vehicle, her bulletproof vest still on, but no longer breathing. The news spread quickly. A mother of 3, shot and killed in front of her home. The same woman who had pleaded for protection just days earlier. The same woman whose video warning now felt like a prophecy ignored. People couldn't believe it. How could someone cry out for help so clearly and still be failed by the very system meant to protect her? Her death wasn't just another story in the news. It was a wake-up call, a reminder of how domestic violence can escalate when warning signs are overlooked. Kiera's family was shattered. Her children were left without a mother. And an entire community was left with a haunting question: what more could she have done? In the days that followed, the man she feared most, her estranged husband, became the focus of a manhunt. Authorities issued warnings, urging the public to stay alert. But the truth is, everyone already knew who was responsible. Kiera had told them. She had said it loud and clear. She had done everything right. Her story sparked outrage and heartbreak nationwide. People shared her video online, replaying her words over and over, realizing how powerful they were, and how devastating it was that no one acted in time. Domestic violence advocates called it one of the clearest examples of a system failure. Police departments and lawmakers faced pressure to explain why a man accused of assaulting his wife was released so quickly, Why a woman had to wear a bulletproof vest just to feel safe enough to drive her children to school. Kara's story isn't just about tragedy. It's about courage and how one woman tried to take control of her own fate in a world that often looks the other way. It's about how warnings are ignored until it's too late and how lives are lost in the cracks of bureaucracy and disbelief. Kara Hudson was more than a headline. She was a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, a woman who loved her children deeply and fought to protect them until her last breath. Her story reminds us that behind every statistic, behind every news report, there's a human being who just wanted to live. And as her family continues to fight for justice, the rest of the world can't help but ask, how many more Kiras will it take before change finally comes? Tonight, we tell her story, not to relive her pain, but to make sure her voice is never silenced again. This is the story of Kara Hudson, the mother who warned the world before it was too late. Kara Hudson's life began like so many others, full of dreams, laughter, and the quiet hope for a good, simple life. She was known in her neighborhood as a woman of light, someone who smiled easily, who loved her children fiercely, and who carried herself with a quiet strength that drew people in. Those who knew her best said she was the kind of person who would give you her last dollar if you needed it, the kind of mother who never missed a school event, a birthday, or a bedtime story. She was a mother of 3, 2 daughters and a little boy, and her world revolved around them. Friends recall how her social media was filled with pictures of their milestones, first days of school, family picnics, and messy birthday cakes. She wasn't famous, she wasn't rich, but she was happy, or at least she tried to be. Behind the smiles, behind the curated snapshots of family life, there was a shadow growing quietly in the background. For years, Kara had been in a relationship with a man she once believed was her soulmate. They had built a home together, shared dreams, and raised their children under the same roof. But over time, the man she loved began to change. What started as small moments of jealousy, questions about where she went, who she talked to, slowly turned into anger, then control. It's a story far too many women know too well, love turning into fear. At first, she made excuses for him. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe things would get better. She wanted to keep her family together. She wanted to believe that people could change. But the arguments grew louder. The bruises harder to hide. The apologies more empty each time. There were nights when her children would wake up crying, and she'd whisper to them that everything was fine, that mommy was okay. But she wasn't. Inside, she was breaking apart. Friends began to notice the signs. They urged her to leave. They told her to protect herself. But leaving isn't simple when you have children, when you've built a life with someone who controls every piece of it.
And us this week will mark 2 years since a mother was shot and killed in front of her children in Buffalo, a case that sparked a larger conversation about domestic violence and protections for victims.
It now has renewed attention with Kara Hudson's family suing the Cheektowaga Police Department, accusing them of failing to step in against her alleged abuser and killer, her husband.
It was October 5th, 2022. You may remember this, when Hudson was shot in her SUV on the corner of Rich Lawn and Shawnee Avenue. Her husband, Adam Benefield, was arrested a week later, charged with second-degree murder. I was there moments after she was killed, and her family told me that the day before her death, Benefield was arrested for allegedly punching and kicking her in their Cheektowaga home. We're told he was released that same day, and her family blamed bail reform for that.
The lawsuit filed by Hudson's mother Tuesday accuses the town of Cheektowaga and its police department of failing to properly charge Benefield and keep him behind bars. That lawsuit says this gave Benefield the opportunity to kill Hudson the next day.
So tonight we're taking a look back at the day Hudson was killed. I spoke with her sister then about Kiara and her efforts to escape her abuser. Plus, I'm giving a voice to a survivor of domestic violence and those working to help people in abusive relationships. It was 2 years ago this week when Kara Hudson was shot and killed in her SUV in front of her 3 children. Her family told me that day it was her husband, Adam Benefield, who shot her after a long history of domestic abuse.
She's just been trying to get help. I've been with her, going to police stations. She's been texting me, sending me videos.
Montasia Jeter told me back then her sister was so scared she put on a bulletproof vest before leaving her mother's house in Cheektowaga to take her kids to school.
He must have been stalking her. My mom asked her, "Why are you putting that vest on?" She said, "Because, Mom, he's going to kill me. You don't understand." And as soon as she went around the corner, he killed her.
Now, 2 years later, Kiara's family filing a lawsuit against the town of Cheektowaga and its police department, claiming numerous warning signs were ignored. Meanwhile, this case continues to raise awareness about domestic violence.
What we have to remember is Kiara was a human being. She was the daughter. She was a mother.
Catherine Miles Kenya is the CEO of the Family Justice Center, working to help victims of domestic violence.
Well, people in our Western New York area might not know Kiara. They know Kiara's story, but they also have to know that abuse is happening everywhere. It does not discriminate.
The Family Justice Center provides services including help with legal support, finding a shelter, and filing charges.
It's difficult to reconcile the level of violence that we're seeing, the level of injury, the level of hurt and pain. It's also hard to reconcile broken systems that people are navigating.
Ava Thomas knows what it's like to navigate the system. She is a survivor of domestic violence herself.
I tried to navigate everything on my own, keep everything a secret. It nearly cost me my life.
She says she got several orders of protection in different cities and towns.
The initial order that was granted, he broke that several times. I reported it. You report it to whatever jurisdiction the incident happens in.
Her abuser eventually went to prison, and Ava is now working at the Family Justice Center, hoping to prevent more tragedies like what happened to Kiara. The day she was killed, her sister told me it was the system that failed their family.
She said if anything ever happens to her, she would not rest in peace.
I did reach out to the town of Cheektowaga and the Cheektowaga Police Department. The police chief telling me they can't comment on litigation. I have not yet heard back from the town attorney. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, there are resources that can help. Those include the Family Justice Center, Erie County Child and Family Services, and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And we have those phone numbers for you at WKVW.com.
But then came the night that changed everything. It was late September 2022 when things took a violent turn. The details, as told by investigators and family members, were devastating. There was an argument, loud, chaotic, and terrifying. It spilled into the open, no longer hidden behind closed doors. Kiara was attacked, beaten by the man she had once trusted most. When it was over, she was left bruised, shaken, and terrified for her life. That night, she did something brave. Something that would later be seen as both her cry for help and her final act of defiance. She went online and shared a video showing the aftermath. In that video, her face told the story her heart had been forced to carry for too long. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but her message was clear. She wanted the world to know what had happened to her. She wanted it recorded. "If anything happens to me," she said, "it's because of him." Those words would later echo through news reports and courtrooms, a haunting reminder that she had seen her fate coming long before anyone else did. After that night, her abuser was arrested. It seemed, for a brief moment, like justice might finally be on her side. She told her family she felt relieved, that she finally had a chance to breathe. But her relief was short-lived. Within days, the man she feared was back on the streets, released from custody. Kiara was terrified. She confided in her family, telling them she didn't feel safe. Her sister would later say she had begged the system to protect her. She moved in with her mother for a short while, hoping that being surrounded by family would keep her safe. But deep down, she knew the danger was still close. She began taking extra precautions. She changed her routine, looked over her shoulder, and even started wearing a bulletproof vest when she went out. Think about that for a moment. A young mother wearing armor just to take her kids to school. That's how real her fear was. Her family tried to support her, but they were terrified too. They didn't know what else to do. She had done everything right. She had reported the abuse, spoken out publicly, gone to the authorities. And yet, she still had to live in fear of being hunted. The morning of October 5, 2022, started like any other for most people, but not for Kiara. That morning, she woke early, prepared breakfast, and got her kids ready for school. There's something profoundly heartbreaking about that normalcy. A mother brushing her daughter's hair, packing lunches, giving goodbye kisses, while knowing deep down that she might not come back home. Neighbors later said she looked tense that morning. Her movements were quick, cautious. She got her kids into the car, strapped them in, and drove off, wearing the same bulletproof vest she had worn the day before. She didn't know that somewhere nearby, the man she feared most was waiting. In those final moments before everything unraveled, Kara might have felt a flicker of hope, that she could just make it through the day, that her children could get to school safely. Maybe she thought the vest would be enough. Maybe she thought the worst was finally behind her. But sometimes, when systems fail, when warnings are ignored, fate catches up faster than anyone can react. Kara's mother would later say she had sensed something that morning, a heaviness in the air, a mother's intuition that she couldn't quite explain. She had told Kara to stay home, to wait, to let her take the kids that day. But Kara insisted. She wanted her children to have some sense of normal life. She wanted to be brave for them. As she pulled out of the driveway, her family had no idea it would be the last time they'd ever see her alive. What followed would shake an entire community, a tragedy so raw and so preventable that it left everyone asking how a system could let this happen after all the warnings, all the cries for help, all the evidence that danger was coming. Kara Hudson had done everything she could to save herself. But sometimes, courage isn't enough when the world doesn't listen. This was the calm before the storm, the quiet moments before everything would collapse into heartbreak, outrage, and a desperate demand for justice. The morning of October 5, 2022, began with a chill in the air and a silence that seemed almost unnatural. The streets of Buffalo were just waking up, children heading to school, parents rushing to work, and the hum of ordinary life unfolding. But within minutes, that fragile calm would shatter. At around 8:30 a.m., on the corner of Richlawn Avenue and Shawnee Avenue, a sound cut through the morning stillness, sharp, unmistakable, and devastating. A series of gunshots echoed down the street, sending birds scattering and neighbors ducking for cover. When the noise faded, a car sat motionless at the curb. Inside was 40-year-old mother of 3, Kara Hudson. She was slumped behind the wheel, her bulletproof vest riddled with holes. The realization of what had just happened hit like a wave. Someone had ambushed her, the same man she had begged the system to protect her from. The same man she had told the world would be the one to hurt her. Her estranged husband, Adam Benefield, had been waiting. Reports would later reveal that he followed her that morning, knowing her routine, knowing she'd be taking the children to school. The same children who would now have to grow up without their mother. Neighbors rushed outside, some calling 911, others trying to comfort Kiara's family, who arrived minutes later. Her mother collapsed at the scene, screaming her daughter's name. Her sisters stood frozen, unable to comprehend that the fear they'd all shared had come true in the most horrific way possible. The police arrived, but by then Adam was gone. He had fled the scene, leaving destruction and grief in his wake. What followed was one of the most intense manhunts in Western New York that year. The search for a man everyone knew was capable of violence, and now, capable of something much worse. As the investigation began, the public outcry was immediate. The community couldn't understand how a woman could go to the police, show proof of abuse, post evidence publicly, and still end up dead. Her story wasn't just about one man's violence, it was about a system that saw the danger but failed to stop it. Reporters began digging through court records, piecing together a timeline that revealed how deeply flawed the process had been. Just days before the attack, Adam had been arrested and charged with assaulting Kiara. She had told officers he beat her so badly that she feared for her life. The video she recorded, bruises visible, tears in her eyes, had been shared widely online. In it, she named him, begged for protection, and made it clear that she was terrified of what he might do next. But despite the evidence, despite her pleas, he was released on his own recognizance. No bail, no restrictions, no protection for her. It was a decision that would cost her everything. As detectives dug deeper, they learned more about the volatile relationship between Kiara and Adam. Friends described him as controlling, jealous, and prone to sudden anger. He didn't like when she went out, didn't like her independence, and constantly accused her of things that weren't true. When she finally decided to leave him, he saw it as betrayal, something he couldn't tolerate. Family members would later say that Adam couldn't stand the idea of Kiara moving on with her life. He wanted control, and when she broke free, he lost it. The night before her death, he had reportedly been seen near her home, driving slowly past, watching. She knew he was out there. She told her sister she felt like she was being hunted. Police canvassed the neighborhood for footage, and soon, surveillance videos began to fill in the gaps. Cameras captured Adam's vehicle trailing behind Kiara's car moments before the shooting. Another camera recorded his car speeding away from the scene seconds after the gunfire. The evidence was clear. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was calculated, planned. As the manhunt continued, Kiara's story began to spread beyond Buffalo. Domestic violence survivors across the country saw themselves in her, a woman who had tried to escape, who had done everything right, but was still failed by the system. Social media erupted with messages of outrage and grief. Her name became a rallying cry for change. Meanwhile, her family was left to pick up the pieces. Her children, too young to understand, kept asking when their mother was coming home. Her sister, devastated, began speaking publicly, demanding justice and accountability. Her mother, through tears, told reporters she did everything she was supposed to do. And they still let her down. Days turned into weeks, and still, Adam was on the run. Every corner of the city seemed to carry his shadow, wanted posters, news reports, police checkpoints. People were terrified that he might strike again. Then, finally, after nearly 2 weeks on the run, authorities caught him. He was found hiding in a home in North Tonawanda, New York, disheveled, quiet, and unremorseful. When officers led him out in handcuffs, the cameras captured his blank expression. He said nothing, but the silence spoke volumes. When he was taken into custody, the community's grief turned into anger. How could someone like him, with a known history of violence, have been released so easily? How could the system that was meant to protect victims leave someone like Kiara defenseless? The district attorney's office soon announced charges: second-degree murder, possession of a weapon, and several other counts related to the assault. But for Kiara's family, it wasn't enough. They wanted to know why she wasn't protected in the first place. Prosecutors later confirmed that Adam had a lengthy criminal history. He had previously served time for kidnapping another woman, an ex-girlfriend. He had tied her up, gagged her, and beaten her before being sent to prison. And yet, despite that history, he was allowed back on the streets to repeat the cycle. As these details came out, the public's outrage grew louder. Activists and lawmakers began pushing for changes to New York's bail laws, arguing that violent offenders like Adam should never be released without conditions. Kiara's death became a symbol, a tragic reminder that reform was urgently needed. In the days that followed, vigils were held in her memory. Hundreds of people gathered, holding candles and wearing purple, the color that represents domestic violence awareness. They spoke her name, shared her story, and promised to keep fighting so that no other woman would meet the same fate. But behind the public movement, behind the headlines and social media hashtags, there was the private grief. A mother without her daughter, children without their mother, sisters without their best friend. The emotional toll on the family was indescribable. Every photo, every video, every memory was now a reminder of what had been stolen from them. Her sister later said she couldn't bear to watch the video Kiara had posted, the one where she warned the world, because hearing her voice felt like losing her all over again. Meanwhile, Adam sat in custody, awaiting trial. His defense team claimed he snapped, that he acted out of emotion, not premeditation. But those who knew Kiara's story refused to accept that. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was the result of control, anger, and a system that turned a blind eye until it was too late. In the months that followed, her story continued to echo across the state. Legislators cited her case as they debated new protections for domestic violence victims. Advocates used her name in campaigns demanding stricter bail conditions and better safeguards for survivors. But for those closest to her, no law or reform could ever fill the emptiness she left behind. Every birthday, every holiday, every small family moment carried the ache of absence. Kiara's death had exposed more than one man's violence. It had revealed a system's failure, a chain of decisions that together formed the perfect storm. And while the investigation had answered the question of who was responsible, it raised an even more painful one. How could this have been prevented? The truth was now undeniable. Kara had seen it coming. She had told the world who would harm her. She had cried out for help. And the very institutions designed to protect her had stood by until it was too late. As her story spread beyond Buffalo, people began saying her name not just in mourning, but as a call to action. Because Kara's story wasn't just her own. It was a mirror reflecting the lives of countless women still trapped in silence, still waiting to be heard before it's too late. It was October 2022 in Buffalo, New York, when the final chapter of Kara Hudson's story was written, one that would echo far beyond the quiet streets where her life was taken. The city was still waking up that morning, the air heavy with early autumn chill, when a scream pierced the stillness, a sound that would mark the end of a young mother's life and the beginning of a movement against the silent epidemic of domestic violence. For weeks, Kara had been living in constant fear. She had escaped the home she shared with her husband, Adam Benefield, a man whose anger had grown uncontrollable. She'd endured more than anyone should ever have to: verbal abuse, physical assault, humiliation. Just a week before her death, Adam was caught on camera brutally attacking her. The footage circulated online, a haunting reminder of the danger she faced. The world saw it, the police saw it, but despite that, he was released without bail. Kara had done everything right. She left. She reported it. She even posted the video online to protect herself, saying, "If anything happens to me, it's him." Those words, written in desperation, would later become a chilling prophecy. That morning, as she strapped her 3 children into the back seat of her SUV to take them to school, Adam appeared, wearing body armor, lying in wait. He ambushed her outside her mother's home and opened fire. Kara never had a chance to scream. Her children watched as their mother's life was taken in seconds. The city froze. Buffalo, already burdened by tragedy that year, mourned again, this time for a mother of 3 who had begged for protection and never got it. Her death wasn't just another case. It became a symbol, a rallying cry for justice and reform. In the weeks that followed, the investigation intensified. Detectives pieced together Kara's final moments, from the haunting domestic violence footage to the unanswered pleas for help. Adam Benefield went on the run, sparking a manhunt that gripped the state. For 6 long days, he evaded capture, hiding in plain sight. Social media buzzed with outrage and heartbreak. Advocates demanded answers. Why was a man who brutally attacked his wife, on camera, allowed to walk free? Why did the system fail a woman who did everything it asked her to do? When Adam was finally caught, the weight of public fury had already built to a storm. Protesters gathered outside courthouses with signs reading, "Justice for Kara," and "Protect victims, not abusers." Legislators began pushing for stronger bail laws for domestic violence offenders. What happened to Kara had broken something open, a truth that could no longer be ignored. Her family spoke out in anguish. Her sister's voice cracked on camera. She told everyone she was scared. She told the police. She told the courts. No one listened. Her mother's grief was immeasurable. A mother who had once warned her daughter to leave now had to bury her child. As Adam's trial approached, his defense tried to paint him as remorseful, claiming he acted out of emotion. But for a public that had watched Kara's abuse unfold in real time, there was no sympathy left. When justice finally came, it did not come quietly. The courtroom was packed. Family, advocates, journalists, and members of the community all came to see if the system would finally get it right. Adam Benefield was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge called the crime a calculated act of cruelty. He was sentenced to decades behind bars, but even that couldn't fill the void left behind. As the verdict was read, Kara's family wept, not out of joy, but out of exhaustion. Justice, they said, came too late. The system had all the warnings. It had all the proof. And still, it failed to protect her. But even in death, Kara's story sparked change. Her case led to renewed debates in New York about bail reform, with lawmakers pushing to close the loopholes that let violent offenders walk free. Domestic violence shelters began receiving more calls from women who said, "I saw what happened to Kara. I don't want to end up like her." Her story became a light for those still living in the shadows, a reminder that silence can be deadly, and that every ignored cry for help has a name, a face, a family left behind. And now her name lives on, not just in tragedy, but in purpose. Her family started the Kara's Law movement, advocating for better protection for domestic violence victims, mandatory bail hearings, and stricter monitoring of abusers. Across Buffalo, murals of her smiling face appeared on walls, a radiant young mother frozen in time, but whose message is now immortal. Her eldest child, too young to fully understand but old enough to remember, once told a reporter, "Mommy was brave. She tried to stay alive." Those words broke hearts around the world, because it was true. Kara fought until the very end. And though the gunshots that morning took her life, they also ignited a fire, one that continues to burn across communities demanding real change. If you've watched this far, don't let her story fade. Share this video, not for views, but for visibility. Every time her name is spoken, every time her story is told, it becomes harder for the world to ignore the women still living her nightmare.